I'm looking at maybe 21 years now of experience teaching in the classroom as a primary school teacher. But 11 years ago, I moved to this wonderful city of Rome in Italy and started working in the international sector as well. So I have a background in state and private schools in the UK. And once I came to the international sector, I also joined a junior school that has a senior school attached to it. And that gave me the opportunity to start working with older students as well. So I've now been working with senior school students and university students in the area of well-being and relationships for this past 11 years. And it's an area that I've always been very, very passionate about. And I've had many roles and responsibilities to do with staff and student well-being and subject coordination throughout my career. And my aim with this webinar today is to provide you with an array of practical strategies and valuable resources that you can readily apply in your classroom settings, or even you might like to implement them school-wide. Having attended numerous webinars and inset days and training days myself as a teacher, I'm very aware of that feeling that you can sometimes have of thinking, well, that's all very good and well, but how am I actually going to have the time to do that in my own setting? Or how do I have the budget for that? Or all of those kind of complications and hurdles that we can think are going to be there for us to actually implement anything that we've just heard of. So for today, I'm really hoping that what I give you are really easy, practical strategies that you can go away with and think, right, okay, I could try that tomorrow in my classroom and see how it goes. So I really want to equip you with a wealth of actionable ideas. So I want to make it as practical as possible for you. And although my main focus today is on student well-being, I think you'd all agree with me that we cannot have student well-being without our teacher well-being. It's an obvious statement, but I think it's worth talking about for a moment. So really recent research from the Teacher Wellbeing Index that's come out of the UK last year showed us, unfortunately, what many of us would probably guess already, that stress within the workplace in terms of education is quite high, and it's rising, especially in the UK, where they've seen over the past 5 years an increase in all of these areas. So we've got, as you can see, 78% of all education staff, so that's not just teaching staff, are feeling stressed, and within that 78% of teachers themselves, and a huge 95% of head teachers are reporting feeling stressed. And then we've got just over 50% of the workforce saying that they're having problems sleeping, or maybe having problems with insomnia. And I listen to a huge range of podcasts, and I'm really interested in self-development and self-awareness and health, not just mental health, but physical health. And you can't listen to an expert without them talking about the importance of sleep. So if we've got over half the workforce in our schools feeling this way, they won't be able to perform to their best ability. So this is something that really needs to be addressed, or we need to be mindful of, especially if we're in a lead position in the school. And then unfortunately, we've got 36% of staff experiencing burnout. And I can totally relate to that. And I'm sure some of you on the call can as well. After 6 years of working at an inner London school, I was the year 6 teacher. I went from year 1 teacher to year 6 teacher in my second year of teaching, quite the steep learning curve. And I just had total burnout and had to take myself traveling for a year just to regroup and recenter and think about my life again, because it was such a tough job. And so we want to be making sure that our teachers, our staff, we ourselves are as healthy as we can be, that our mental health is in as good a place as it can be to give the best to our students. So how can we do that? Well, today, what I wanted to do was just spend a moment with some self-reflection. We very rarely take a moment for ourselves and just to think, take some time out of our busy schedules to think, how are we really doing? How are we taking care of our own well-being in order to give our best to our students or our staff? So I'm going to read to you 10 questions, and I would invite you to write them down, or maybe put them down, note them down in your phone, just to have a little think about some self-reflection today about how you're feeling, and I have resisted answering these questions for myself. So I'm also going to do that now with you, alongside you, just to gauge how long to give you for this activity. So the first thing I will do is read out these questions, and then we can have a moment to answer them. And I won't be asking for individual feedback, but I would love some thoughts in the chat once you have done this about how you felt once the activity is done. Okay, so I'm asking, how would you describe your current level of overall well-being? When's the last time that you laughed? What activities or practices do you engage in that make you feel happy and fulfilled? How do you prioritize self-care in your daily or weekly routine? What challenges or stresses do you encounter in your life, and how do you manage those? Are you aware of particular stresses and how to react to them? Do you have any coping strategies for those? What aspects of your life brings you a sense of purpose and meaning? What relationships or connections do you have that contribute positively to your well-being? Do you feel that you have a balance between work responsibilities and personal time, leisure activities? Maybe some more information about that, yes, no, and how. And are there any changes or adjustments you'd like to do to improve or enhance your overall well-being in the future? Now, it might be that you only want to answer one or two of those, but I'm just going to give us a moment to reflect on those questions, and then I will get back to you. So I'm going to have a go at answering them as well. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop there. I've quickly had a go at answering those questions. And just to finish that off, I'd invite you to think of maybe 1 to 3 actionable goals, having had that little time of reflection. Is there anything, especially related to question 10 there, that you could maybe action today or tomorrow to help with your well-being? Sometimes it's just a reset. Maybe it's things that we already think that we want to do, and we let it go by the wayside. And I've got a picture here of the beach because I actually bought a house here by the beach in a like seaside town 3 years ago. And when I'm working from home all day in front of the computer, I often don't take myself for a break and go and walk along the beach. So one of my goals is that I must do that on a day if I'm not going outside of the house, other than, and I'm only working. So if you'd like to have a go at doing that and write down a couple of goals, and then if anyone would like to share any thoughts, having done that activity, that would be really lovely to hear what that made you think about. And maybe Bethan could share anything if anyone does write anything down in the chat. I found it interesting. I found it quite difficult to think about when I really belly laughed last. I mean, I know I laughed yesterday, but when was the last time I really had a massive laugh?
Yeah, so we've had a couple of thoughts actually.
Nice.
That have come in. Apologies, I think it's my internet connection that seems to be a bit.
Okay.
Apologies if there's a delay. So we've had a couple of submissions that have been really lovely that I'll read out. So someone has said they're actually feeling exhausted at the moment. There's a lot of events that are coming to the end of the academic year, which I think is a feeling that a lot of people are sharing right now, with exams and lots of events for the coming up to the end of the year. But then we've also had, so when was the last time I laughed? So it was this afternoon with my colleagues over silly things.
Oh, nice.
There's you can make light heart for everywhere as well, can't you? And then also someone has said, again, with the colleagues laughing, but also with their adorable students at all times, which I think is also lovely.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And that's why we're doing it, isn't it? That's what kind of recenters us and gives us that purpose and meaning a lot of the time, doesn't it? Because it's not just a job, it's a vocation when we're working with children. We're all here because we really want to help and make a difference. As cheesy as that might sound, that is why we're here. Yeah. So and I completely appreciate that first comment of, if it's towards the end of the academic year where you are in the world, like it is here in Italy, it's a time where there's just event after event and tests and report writing, and workload can be just such a huge issue. And I think it's about working out, okay, what things can we control? And within that, we can control how we respond to things, what's manageable, maybe what isn't, who can we talk to for support. So obviously, I could do a whole webinar on staff wellbeing, and maybe we could talk a little bit more about that in our Q&A if it's something that people want to delve into a bit further. But now I wanted to move on more to the student side of things. And I wanted to talk a little bit about third culture kids. So I know that we all work in the international sector, and you've all shared where you are joining us from today around the world. And I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge how our pupils' upbringings can affect their mental health and well-being. And this term, third culture kids, TCKs, was coined by sociologist Ruth Hill Useem in the 1950s. And she used this term to describe the children who spent a significant portion of their formative years living outside their parents' culture due to their parents' work or other reasons, resulting in the children forming a third culture that combines elements of their parents' culture and the host culture where they live. So here you've got a screenshot from my school's website with a nice range of lovely smiling faces. And I just wanted to take this girl here as an example. So her parents are Chinese. I know that she's living in a very Chinese setting. When she's at home, she's eating Chinese food, she's speaking Mandarin, she's watching Chinese TV shows, she's reading Chinese books. And so she's very much, obviously that's her home, that's her parent culture. Then when she's walking to school, when she's out and about in her free time, she's in Italy, dealing with that language and all the cultural glories that we have here in Italy. And then she's coming to our school, which is very British, international school, where of course inside our school we have a whole range of, we have about 90, I think, nationalities at our school of children. We've got different teachers from different areas of the world. And so she's having to navigate all of that. And TCKs often face challenges related to identity and belonging and cultural adjustment as they navigate between these different cultural contexts throughout their lives. And that, of course, is different to the children that we may have taught if we just stayed in our location, in our home countries, if you're an expat like me. So statistics indicate that TCKs tend to have higher levels of cultural competence and adaptability, which of course we would hope for, and we can understand that because of what they're experiencing. But also they may experience challenges related to mental health and well-being, such as feelings of rootlessness or a lack of belonging. And studies have shown that TCKs are more susceptible to anxiety, depression, and identity confusion compared to their peers who have not experienced multiple cultural transitions. And it's also possible that their unique upbringing and experiences of frequent mobility and cultural adaptation may increase their vulnerability to ACEs, which you may have also heard of. ACEs are adverse childhood experiences, and they are things such as any type of abuse, neglect, maybe caregiver, mental illness. So we do have to be aware that alongside the challenges they might be facing related to identity, belonging, and social adjustment, they can also be experiencing those stresses which are related and associated with things like relocation, separation from friends that they've made in a new location, or separation from family. And of course, it's true of all children, but I think we really need to be building resilience. We need to be fostering strong social support networks. We need to be building emotional literacy and promoting positive coping strategies to help our TCKs navigate these challenges that they might face, because we really want them to thrive in this unique global upbringing. So one of the ways in which we can explicitly talk about these issues and teach emotional literacy and coping strategies is within timetabled well-being lessons. And I do feel that we're asked to cover so many objectives, aren't we? And if you're like me, as a subject lead, I've often felt overwhelmed with the sheer amount of objectives and content in this topic area. So for example, I work within the British curriculum, so I look to the PSHE Association, for example, to give us a good set of guidelines and all the objectives we should be covering and when. Of course, it doesn't give you lesson plans. Well, they do have some, but it's quite a huge task to make sure that all of the objectives are being covered across the school, thinking about when they should be covered, making sure that we don't have any overlaps and gaps in our teaching, and that the year groups are building on prior learning each year. So we have this kind of secular curriculum. So I believe as a teacher, it's enormously helpful to get the support of a ready-made curriculum that does all that kind of heavy lifting for you. And it ensures you that you not only hit all of those objectives, but it actually gives you the materials to show you how to do it. So I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to share with you this new scheme of work, which was co-authored by Victoria Pugh and Kate Daniels, who are experts in the field. And it's a comprehensive programme, which includes children's workbooks like these, teaching slides with detailed notes, and really easy to follow teacher guides. And the teacher guides are complete with lesson plans. They also have key vocabulary in them to help with our EAL learners and also to do some pre-teaching if we need to. And then there's the range of resources that are also in the books, for example, flashcards, which are going to support and accompany the lessons. And I recently had the opportunity to talk to Victoria, and she shared some really insightful details about their approach to this. So she explained that they began with grounding their work in solid educational theory. So specifically universal design for learning, which is a teaching approach that aims to accommodate the diverse needs and abilities of all our learners. So eliminating any hurdles for them in the learning process. And they looked at theories like the graduated approach, quality first teaching, social and emotional learning, and distancing techniques. And in fact, they were acutely aware of local context from the beginning of the project. And they really wanted to make sure that everyone, no matter where you are in the world, can use the materials. So I think this has really resulted in an incredibly inclusive language and graphics, as you can see from the screen, throughout the scheme, and it's self-contained, which means you don't need to, go and resource anything else additional to use it. And here we can see a spread that are really focusing on emotional literacy. And I think the most important thing that we can teach our children right from when they're very small, our youngest learners, is language around their feelings. So being in touch with their feelings and how to describe and share those. So they've definitely done that. You can see that it's a culturally responsive scheme. It's skill-based as well. And Victoria explained to me that she and Kate really wanted each child to engage in self-reflection and develop essential skills to enhance their self-awareness. And I think you can see that throughout the scheme. There's such a big range of activities that encourage emotional literacy, voicing opinions respectfully, and active listening. And you can see as well, I've just wanted to show you, you can just see that the authors have extensive classroom knowledge. When you flick through the workbooks, they just understand what works and what doesn't. And I think as class teachers, we have an intuitive sense of which materials are going to work and what's going to engage our students. And these are very well pitched. They're really highly engaging. And like I said earlier, there's just such a wide range of activities, and they allow the students to really share their thoughts and learning in their own ways. And you can see through the graphics, I don't know, they're holding some different ones up there as well for the older children, that they are really lovely and inclusive, and they're just so well aimed and so well pitched for the children that they're aimed at. And I think one of the standout features of the scheme is the adaptability of the slides. So these PowerPoint slides come with a comprehensive notes for teachers, which serves a multitude of purposes, doesn't it? Because with these notes, you can enhance for the teachers their delivery of the lesson. So they're going to deliver it with confidence. It prepares the class teacher. Maybe if you've got a supply teacher coming in or doing something last minute, the notes are there to guide them, as well as the lesson plan. And also, as you can see, you've got replaceable images. So we can make sure that we can make the resources very context driven. So we can use local imagery to make it really, really relatable for our children. Here are some more slides. So again, this is all to do with emotional literacy. Some just lovely graphics there as well. I think the scheme also emphasises the importance of exploring what it means to be part of our specific communities, like I was saying, and that personalised approach helps support students connect more deeply with the content. And I think that really makes learning more meaningful and impactful. And it's wonderful for us international teachers, because often, I don't know about you, I will head to, because I am British resources, and they might not be appropriate for our international context, and these really are. I think, as you would expect in a wellbeing resource, they don't only cover emotional literacy, but they also look at how we can take care of ourselves physically through self-care practices. So you've got first aid in there, medicines, you've got financial literacy. And I really loved the lessons that taught about self-resilience, because often you can see an objective that says, you know, we need to teach children to be more resilient, but how do we do that in fun and engaging ways? And you can see here you've got some really nice don't give up activities for the younger learners. Moving house. So again, I've never seen so many resources around moving and dealing with all of those emotions involved of being maybe a little bit transient. So I thought that was lovely as well. And then lessons around grief, which again, it can be quite difficult sometimes to teach about those topics. So having something that you can trust, that's been so well researched, that you can go to on these topics, it is just super helpful. And lastly, I think that Victoria and Kate have really created here a robust and versatile scheme of work, and it's grounded in educational theory, it's culturally responsive, and it's designed with the practicalities of classroom teaching in mind. I think it's a resource that not only supports the teachers, but it also empowers students to develop critical skills and engage with their learning in a meaningful way. And whether we buy into a scheme or we tailor make something for our schools, I think we need to be committed to timetabled wellbeing sessions that are safeguarded in order to be delivered regularly. And even as a subject need in some contexts, I know that things like PSHE sometimes can be the first to slip off the timetable. And I think now, with such a growing understanding of the importance of wellbeing, we just can't let that happen. So alongside that, I am positive that all of us use plenty of strategies daily in our teaching that are aimed at modelling well-being for our students. And I thought it would be a nice idea to ask all of my teacher friends and colleagues from around the world for some of the things that they do that they find consistently works for the well-being of their pupils. And you'll see in the upcoming slides, I've also just added small screenshots from some of the children's workbooks from that scheme, if they relate to a given strategy that I've mentioned before, or that's being mentioned by a friend or colleague here. So let's start with Joanne Bailey. At the moment, she's a year 2 teacher in Abu Dhabi, and she sent me 2 strategies which I thought were lovely. One of them here, she says that when the children come into the classroom in the morning, they tap how they're feeling, and that just gives her a quick and good gauge as to their moods. And it's also good practice for them to check in with themselves and see how they are feeling. And yes, actually, one thing I wanted to say before I go through these strategies is I'm not trying to say that any of this stuff is groundbreaking and that none of us have ever thought of this before, but I think sometimes it's just really nice to see A, what other people are doing around the world in their classrooms, and B, to go, yeah, actually, that I've tried that before in the past, and for some reason I've stopped doing it, so maybe I could reintroduce that into my classroom, or, oh, I like a little bit of that idea, so I'll take that. So I think it's really nice for us to be sharing and celebrating what we're all already doing and enhancing what we're doing. And Joanne, of course, will have done some pre-teaching around these feelings before she put this up. I'm interested to know what a scribble feeling feels like. I can guess what it feels like. So she would have done some pre-teaching there, and then they're just coming in and tapping how they feel. Now, I've also seen teachers put something on each child's table. So for example, some kind of chart, and then the child can just move maybe their name or a picture of themselves or a sticker on an area of that chart. So whilst the teacher is quietly moving around the classroom in the morning, first thing, they can then see how the child is feeling. And that means that the child hasn't been asked to maybe have something up on a wall to show how they're feeling. So it's just a discreet way of, and a comfortable way of a child sharing how they're feeling first thing in the morning with their teacher. Another thing that Joanne does, which I absolutely love, is this flexible seating in the classroom. And it's a choice that the children have given. And she says, I've built up the system over time to give them ownership of how they learn best. It boosts their independence and we have a sense of trust in the classroom. I trust them to make sensible learning choices by sitting at the low or middle tables or standing at the table. And it also really supports self-regulation for the SEN children. And how lovely is that? And I was thinking myself, you know, if I was spending all day learning in one classroom, how lovely to think, okay, for this lesson, I'm going to sit on the yoga block or on this little block, and I'm going to sit down here. Maybe I really want to concentrate on some neat writing now. So I'm going to sit at this table. Now I'm going to stand up at this station to do my artwork. So just allowing the children to choose for themselves. And I think the important thing she's saying there is giving them the time at the beginning of the year to just explore, because of course there's going to be a lot of excitement there. I'm sure there might be a little bit of hustle and bustle for, you know, maybe everyone wants to sit on the floor to begin with. But it's about trusting the system and trusting the children to learn how to choose what's best for themselves. And here, there's an investment in low tables, but once we've done that, we're good to go. So I really, really liked that one from Joanne. And with Joanne mentioning SEN learners, I just wanted to take a moment to think about our SEND learners and their well-being. So obviously our sensory systems are absorbing all this information from the world around us. And these three last bullet points here, where we're talking about touch, using our muscles to understand where our body is in the environment, the sense of how our body's moving against gravity, we know that our SEND learners can sometimes become dysregulated. And as well as being aware of those triggers, for example, unexpected situations, too much noise, we know that we're all teachers in our busy classrooms. We've all had the privilege to work with children like this in the past. And I think sensory boxes are a lovely way to help children regulate themselves. So it might be that we have a box in the classroom that has, you know, ear mufflers onto noise cancelling headphones, or maybe they could listen to some music just to focus themselves. Maybe they want to be fiddling with a toy or touching something and playing with something. Maybe a smell, bringing them into the present moment. Maybe looking at something cute, who doesn't smile when they see pictures of kittens and puppies. And then I've just read an article recently about how chewing can help ADHD learners. So that's really interesting to me, because I do spend a lot of time in senior school telling people not to chew gum. And now I might be saying, okay, chew the gum because it's going to help with your concentration. So we're always living and learning here, but maybe having an area of the classroom or resources in the classroom that our children can take ownership of and can go to when they need to calm themselves down. We're giving them coping strategies for life by doing that, aren't we? So they know that that kind of a technique will help them in the future if they're feeling a bit dysregulated. So Tim Barnard is the deputy head here at one of our junior schools, and he said that he uses diaphragmatic breathing techniques such as finger breathing to help children calm down and take a moment. And I think breathing is one of those things where, sorry, my cat's making an entrance there. Breathing is one of those things that sometimes, obviously we're doing it, but we're shallow breathing. Sometimes we just need a bit of a reminder to take a deep breath, and that we know scientifically how that can calm the body down, regulate our systems. So something sensory for our younger children, maybe as finger breathing or box breathing, where we're inhaling and we're holding our breath and then we're calming down. So in the moment, that can be really helpful. But also that can be, I often do that if I walk into a classroom and I think the energy levels are up here and I just need to take it down to a calm learning energy before I start teaching. So Emily Gopal works in the UK. She's an art education consultant there. She's worked with many great institutions like the BBC, the Tate Modern, and she says she consciously plans for moments in her lessons that are less structured, where students can do things like free draw in their doodle books. In fact, this is something I've taken to a lot of schools, she says, which has helped them with their transition times throughout the day, first thing in the morning and after lunch. And what I love about this is Emily saying, look, I am planning my art lessons very carefully, and I'm preempting when they might need a little brain break or a well-being kind of moment. And so that's when I'm planning in for a less structured free drawing moment. And on her suggestion, I did use this idea one year where I introduced the doodle books, and during times of transition or early in the morning or finishing off time, they would get out their doodle books and they absolutely loved it. You can also find established artists who are doodle artists to inspire the kids, but I don't find that children need much excuse to be doodling in their books. And I thought that was a really lovely idea. Harry Denton is the head of computer science here. He's just come over from Thailand. He's now working in Italy. And I thought he said a really simple but a really lovely point here, that I try to be light-hearted and jovial wherever possible, telling jokes and smiling. It's good for my well-being, and I think it is good for the kids too. And I think that it's just such a lovely reminder that if we are laughing and joking with the children in our class, that means, what does that really mean? It means we're being present with them, and they pick up on that, and they love that. And of course, everyone wants to have a nice feeling when they're in the classroom. It's lovely to have a bit of a laugh. Of course, sometimes the jokes can go too far and the kids can't take it, but we've got to rein it in a bit. But it's all about understanding our children, isn't it? And I'm not a great joke teller, but I can tell stories normally that make children laugh. And so I just thought that was a really sweet reminder. One thing that I started doing was I was watching my other teachers in the school doing this, and I thought, I'm the year 6 teacher. I'm not sure about hugging my children, because in the past, coming from a UK background, maybe I wanted to make sure that physically that there was a bit of a distance, especially as a lot of them are getting as tall as I am. But I decided, okay, I'm going to try this. So first thing in the morning, the children would line up outside the classroom door, and they'd have a choice to either give me a hug, do a little dance with me, do a high five, or very quickly, the children wanted to initiate a year 6 secret handshake. And I just thought it was such a nice way to greet each child in the morning, make sure I'm looking at them, I'm saying their name, I'm asking how they are. And I was definitely getting a good gauge, again, like Joanne was saying there, of how they're feeling as they're walking into my classroom, especially for those children that maybe wouldn't normally come in for a hug, but they're coming in for a hug this morning. It just makes me very mindful that maybe I'll just keep an extra eye out on that child today, because they might need a little bit of extra emotional support. So I never went back once I introduced that. I made sure that I was always greeting each child at the door. Gary Phillips has been my work partner for quite a few years in St. George's. We've worked in year 6 together. And following a mindful course that we both took, he said we decided to implement daily mindfulness breathing into our year 6 classrooms. And we could maybe start the day with that. We would do it first thing, or maybe before a lesson or after a break time. And the children went from doing it 3 minutes at the beginning of the school year up to 8 to 10 minutes by the end of the year. And the difference it made was really palpable. We even had children saying they were using the techniques independently at home when they were stressed, or helping to get them to sleep. Some of them said they liked doing it before a maths lesson, because unfortunately, by the time they get to year 6, sometimes there's stress around maths. And we would pitch it so that we would say, okay, you can have this time to maybe use it for silent reflection. Maybe you want to take the time in silent prayer. If you would like to, you might want to do some being present in the moment exercises, like just really focusing on your breathing. And in fact, a week ago, I was listening to a podcast with a neuroscientist, and she said that we know through multiple studies that mindfulness is good for brain plasticity in the areas that are important for focused attention, and they enrich the function of your prefrontal cortex, which is anything where you're focusing on an object, maybe you're focusing on breathing. Yes, there's plenty of studies that show that changes occur that are very beneficial if you practice that for a period of time. So one thing I wanted to say was it would be really lovely for staff to feel they have the autonomy to bring their own personalities into the classroom. So obviously somebody like Emily is going to bring artistic well-being breaks into the classroom and strategies. And here we've got Katie Roberts, who's head of music here in Rome, and Natasha Wilson, she's a musical director in New Zealand, and both talk to me about music. So Katie said that we listen to music. Sometimes we enjoy just listening. Other times we talk about how it makes us feel. Often we'll discuss the song lyrics. And what I loved about what Natasha was saying is that her children absolutely love choosing a song at the beginning and the end of the day. She brings up the lyrics on YouTube and they just have a lovely sing-along. So I think it's about us as well, and what we really love, and feeling like it's okay for us to bring our own personalities into the classroom, and that it's valuable for our children for us to do so. Hannah Moore is an EYFS and Key Stage 1 phase leader, and I love that in her classroom she has what she calls a Zen den, and she says she always makes sure that she has a calm zone, and it includes things such as mindful colouring, the children's journals, sensory tools, wellbeing books and breathing strategies. And like Joanne with that structured seating, the flexible seating, what Hannah does is she teaches the children at the beginning of the year all of the strategies to feel calm. And then so when they are dysregulated, as the year goes on, they know that they can just quietly take themselves to the calm zone, to the Zen den, and use one of those resources there. They know that they're feeling supported, and they know then in the future that they can apply any of those strategies to help them feel calm again. And we do know that this works. We know from children feeding back to us that they do use these things at home, and they recognize when they're feeling dysregulated, and then they might use something. And here's some examples of some of the things that children have drawn in her wellbeing journals. And as you can see, we might even get safeguarding things coming up here, where this child has said that they feel sad at home. It might not be a safeguarding thing, but it just gives us an insight into their inner world. So I think that that's very valuable as well. One thing that I did one year was that I'd listened to so much research that was talking about gratitudes and feeling grateful, and how that can enhance mental wellness and possibly promote a lasting change in our perspective. So I introduced gratitude journals in the classroom. So every morning, the children would be invited, whilst I did the register, to write 1 to 3 gratitudes in their books. And then if they wanted to, they could share with me what they had written. And it was just such a lovely and sweet way to start the day. You know, some of the things that they were grateful for were just so lovely. And on that, I think it would be lovely also to just have a journal where you can put all of this stuff in. So they have one wellbeing journal, and that can be somewhere where they write gratitudes, they doodle if they need to, they do some free writing or drawing, and just have something, a journal there in the classroom that they can go to and use, maybe during structured time like me with the morning register, or then at other times when they feel they need it. Something I did yesterday, and I thought, oh, I didn't include it in the webinar, so I'm going to include it now. I was with the year 7s, and I said, I'm going to give you 5 minutes just to write anything down that you want to tell me. It's about your life, so you can tell me something about your parents, your home life, your family, how you're feeling about school, how you're feeling about friendships. And I asked them to do it anonymously. I just think it normally encourages much more writing from them. And then I will do a follow-up lesson where I will share with them in general the themes that are coming up with the class and what we can do. How can we cope with these themes? And what's nice for them then to see is that, oh, actually, this is really normal. Other people are feeling this too. I actually had 2 in this group yesterday who said something about their parents not being happy with their parents. Another theme someone wrote, I want to stop using my phone as much, but sometimes I can't resist the temptation. So I'm kind of ashamed of myself about it. So that gives me a really good in to talk about, well, how are we using our phones and these feelings that are coming up from it. So I don't think we do that often enough, where we just give children the time to do that and to see what's going on. I think as well, we know our children quite well. So if we're worried that there's a safeguarding issue, I'm sure we're all able to find out who actually wrote anything worrying that needs to be spoken. You know, if I need to speak to the child one-to-one about, I'm sure I could find a way of finding that child. One thing that I'm sure we're all on board with, if you went through lockdown like we did, it felt like 2 solid years of just being in my house with lockdown and teaching on the internet with all of my students, and I wanted to make sure they were up and moving. So I just wanted to remind everyone that there are plenty of free channels on YouTube where children can move, they can exercise, they can have fun stretching and moving or dancing, and that's always there for us as well. So I just wanted a quick mention. The last person I wanted to talk about is Rhiannon. So Rhiannon Phillips-Bianco, she's the head of Wellbeing for Globe Educate Schools, and she was in the Netherlands for a very long time. She's now over here in Rome, not at my school, but I have the pleasure of knowing Rhiannon. And she very kindly said that I could share some of her wellbeing strategies that she uses in the classroom with you all today. And I'd really encourage you to follow her on LinkedIn, because she posts very, very regularly on all of the things that she's doing in her classrooms. And what I loved about this was she was saying one of the first tasks when she started as wellbeing and positive education leader in her new school was to create a wellbeing survey, which went out to all of the pupils from year 12 to 13. And they analysed the data with a team of staff volunteers, and it really gave them a chance to identify what those needs were and to plan the next steps. And she found that some were actionable straight away, some were gradual, and some have been put in the development plan for next year. And the key is that they're listening to the children. And she said there was something that they did and they put up straight away in the corridor, and she overheard a child walking down the corridor saying, look, they're really listening to us. And how sweet is that? So of course, we need to feel that we're heard as human beings. Our children do as well. And they're going to give us so much information. So curating a wellbeing survey, I thought, was a really, really clever and lovely idea. And what they found when they asked about safety and how children were feeling in the school around safety, with their year 10s, they actually said that they weren't feeling that safe amongst themselves because the banter had gone too far. So here you can see they created wellbeing sessions all about banter. They created a banter meter, and they talked about identifying theirs and other people's lines of acceptance on what's funny and what isn't, what's crossing a line for me. And she said it was a great tool for initiating a discussion about the line between banter and bullying, and crucially ensuring that they were truly listening to one another. Appreciation cards to teachers. Again, very simple, and how lovely if you have that at your school. But I think apart from maybe at the end of the year, I'm not sure how often I can say in my career I've had a little card or a note just to say that I'm appreciated by the children. So how about having a wellbeing lead or a team or your school council, and once a term they put out the task for everyone to write an appreciation card to a teacher, and then they go and deliver them. And what a lovely thing to receive on your desk, like this one here. He's a joyous soul. How lovely is that to receive? She also talked about sharing affirmations. Now, I've come out of the classroom teaching. So after 20 years of classroom teaching and having that security, I'm now in the world of consultancy. I definitely have been using affirmations each morning to help with this journey that I'm on, this more uncertain path. And she told a story of one of the children in her class just seemed a bit unsure of herself that day, and she talked to her about it, and it was because they were going swimming for the first time, and this child was feeling very nervous about that. So she used it as a teaching opportunity, stopped everyone, they had a chat about how they were feeling, and they decided to write some affirmations to, buoy themselves up and feel good about themselves, like, I'm courageous, I'm strong. And then what a lovely idea to have a what went well wall on a Friday. So everyone, as you can see, just write some things that went really well for them during the day or the week, stick it up on the wall, maybe have a chat about it. And how nice then for the children to leave the school at the end of the day with all of that fresh in their minds. As we know from parents, they'll often say, how was your school day? What did you learn? Nothing. How was it? Fine. And they don't get anything else from their children. Maybe if their children, the last thing that they're thinking about as they leave the classroom is really what went well for them during the week, then hopefully that also gets disseminated to their family as well. And lastly, she talked about displays and how sharing well-being tools and strategies with their peers, having it high profile, having a display somewhere that everyone can see in the school. It's a really lovely way of reinforcing to the children in the school that well-being matters here. It is important. And how nice for maybe a year 5 pupil to walk past something that a year 13 child has written, or young adult, and go, oh wow, that's what they do. So I thought there were some really nice strategies there that she's shared. So I think I've talked a lot at you there. Now my hope is that you go away with at least one reflection or actionable actionable, practical strategy that you can take with you into the classroom. And here you can see all of our contact details. So thank you, and I'll pass us back to Bethan.
So I'll leave that on the screen now, just as we go through some questions. And I know we've had some brilliant ones submitted. So thank you very much, everyone that has. Okay, so we've had one that has been sent through from a teacher that is in an international based high school. And it's quite specific, this question, and I guess it's maybe some peer advice here for you, Vicky. So they've got one student that doesn't have any motivation or enthusiasm to attend school, and has a lot of physical sickness and absence. She's really kind-hearted. However, sort of any advice that we're giving about education and well-being is not really impacting. Do you have any strategies or any advice about how you could motivate this student? And any sort of wellbeing techniques that they could use and take home?
Yeah, I think that's really, really difficult. I'm dealing with that a little bit now at the moment in our school as well, where there's one child that's just not coming into school. And so it just becomes very, very difficult. I think my worry is that these types of children can feel very isolated, can become very isolated. They spend an inordinate amount of time online as well, and gaming and things like that. And so anything we can do to keep at least one line of communication open with that child. So for us, we've had to engage the students' friends and say, can you try and contact them and keep in touch and then feed back to us how they're going? Because sometimes we're not getting a response. And I have been able to speak to that student, and on one of the occasions when she came in, and she said, I've just got no motivation to even talk to my friends, but she is appreciating that they're reaching out to her. So if this student does actually get into school and you can spend any one-to-one time just listening to them and talking to them, making sure that the support around the child is there, so other parents being supported as much as possible. It's not always easy. I absolutely understand that. We're very lucky at my school. We have a school psychologist, so she can be heavily involved. So I think as a teacher, sometimes we've got to remember, for our own well-being, we can't save everyone. We can do our absolute best to help the child. So I think just to try and be practical, maybe sending things through, you never know what they're going to grab onto. So maybe recommending a book if they're a reader, that might be a good book to motivate them, or just, can we have a little online chat once a week for 5 minutes just to check in? They will always remember that you were there for them and that you were open to listening to them. I think that that's one of the main things, is just to try and listen as much as possible. And yeah, don't try and do it all yourself. Just get as many people involved as possible to try and support the family as a whole, as well as that student. But I do know it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I'm sure other people in the chat might be able to add to that as well.
Yeah, and family involved, peers involved as well. And like you said, you don't know what necessarily the student's going to grab onto, and it's just being there and providing the support.
Yeah, I mean, if the child, you said there about mobility issues, I think, but for some of the children, I do a check-in and chat. So anyone can come to me on a Wednesday break time and come and have a little chat with me. And I think often what works is just walking. So walking around the track or the field. So you're not face to face. Sometimes, as we know with teenagers, it's nice to walk side by side and see what comes out. Just give them space to walk and talk.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much. And there's a lot of information there to take on. Thank you. Okay, we've had another one that's come through to say, hi, Vicky, I'm in the process of making wellbeing journals for year 6 and 7.
Ooh, nice.
I'm also following the SEL domains to plan the sheets. Please, can you suggest some more ideas or concepts that I can cover in journaling?
Right. So in the wellbeing journals, is this for, well, I don't know if she'll write back, that person will write back straight away. So I'm going to guess that this is for structured lessons for during the wellbeing lesson, or is this for like downtime?
I'm not too sure. We've had the question that's kind of submitted, so I can't see.
Okay, so I think that, yes, so I think that adding as much as we can into these, what we're looking for is going back to the idea of giving our children as many coping strategies as possible, so that when they're out and about in life, that they're going to think, actually, I can deal with this. And I really like the CBT techniques. So that would be, if you haven't looked at that already, you know, we can often have what are called cognitive distortions in our minds, and people fall into different categories. So one thing I think is really nice to teach children is about those distortions. So some people could be real black and white thinkers. Some people can personalize things and think it's all about them. Some people can catastrophize. So, you know, 1 minute you've got a really small problem, and 5 minutes later in your thought process, we're all dead in a ditch somewhere. You know, they really catastrophize things. And then teaching children ways of catching the thought and then reframing it. So there's lots of things out there on that, which I really love doing. I've done that many a time with children in my class. So when they're feeling really dysregulated, the first thing to do is, can we catch that thought, stop, and then before we react, and then we're gonna regret our actions when we react to something like that in that space. Let's think of maybe reframing. Let's thinking about the bigger picture. Let's thinking about, this is going to pass. Is this going to matter in a week's time? So all of those kind of skills. I don't know, maybe if somebody wants to talk to me more in depth about that, they could email me, but just off the top of my head, CBT skills would be really nice to add to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so they've just submitted again to say it's to provide them with support and coping strategies, which then loosely connects with the major SEL domains of the self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship skills and decision making. So that would be perfect then for linking.
Yes. And if they want to get in touch later, maybe I could like put some stuff together to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some more resources. You know, it's always great to pool all of our resources that we found.
Absolutely. And just to share and peer support across the world as well.
Yeah, and what's worked well for us and what hasn't worked.
That's it. Okay, so we've had a couple that have come through as well, asking for the recordings, which yes, we will be sending the recording via email within the next week. So do keep an eye on your emails for that. And then, so I know I'm conscious that we're on the hour now, but we've had some really great submissions for questions. So I think I might just sneak one more in, if that's okay.
Go for it.
So one of them is, so what role do you think school leadership should be playing in promoting student wellbeing?
A massive one. That is a great question. And also I was just thinking, if there are any school leaders on the call, we need to be really aware of how to support our staff well-being, first of all, going back to that first bit of input, and thinking about, it's not just sending people off to do some team building. It's about being transparent, good communication, helping managing workloads, you know, supporting our staff as much as possible. People need to feel seen and heard and feel valued in their workplace. And once you've got happy staff, you will have happy kids anyway. But I think in terms of senior leaders supporting our students, I think they need to be able to give the staff autonomy to be trying out these different wellbeing practices in their classrooms, and then giving them space, maybe in staff meetings, to share that with other people. Maybe it could be a school-wide initiative. I think investing in having some kind of wellbeing lead or a wellbeing team, or making it a strong part of the school council to make sure that it's high profile and that these things aren't forgotten. And I think putting time and training into initiatives is an important one. You want to make sure that the staff know that it's high priority and that they are putting maybe money and time into it. And I think we can make it high profile from our senior leaders through things like assemblies, planned themed weeks, you know, having competitions. So they've got to buy into it themselves. And I think once that's up and yeah, I know maybe I'm living in a utopian bliss here, but that would be my advice. And then monitoring to make sure that all staff are on board once it's up and running, making sure that it keeps going. I said that because I saw a smiley laughy face there emoji. I know, but we can't keep giving new initiatives to teachers and then forgetting them. Like, let's choose one and then really back it, you know?
Go with it. Yeah,
embed it as a properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And embed it as the group. They're brilliant ideas, and everyone has got to be on board. It's a real group effort, and it can sometimes maybe feel like it's falling to one person, but actually, you know, getting leadership involved, getting and building everyone else.
Exactly. Yeah, like Rhiannon said, she had 12 staff volunteers for that wellbeing team. I mean, that's the team that's going to stay the course, because there's lots of people involved in it.